Ansary here with a 111 alert. It is November 1st in the year 2018. Welcome. So we can easily end up bombarded and overwhelmed by the news that is taking place, but that's no excuse for not being aware of where we are in the timeline. I want to welcome you to this live stream. I'm not going to be appearing on camera because we're going to be focusing not so much on myself, but what we're looking at before us here. And without further ado, we're going to get into the information. Top General fears war with China and Russia at the same time. An exclusive interview with Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, just retired commander of the U.S. Army in Europe, who warns that war with China is likely in the next 15 years. His stark assessment was followed, as it happened, by bellicose statements from Chinese ruler Xi Jinping and his defense minister. So the author of this report at the Daily Beast says, so I called Hodges over the weekend for clarification, and his estimation of the situation was in many respects even more grim than his remarks in Poland. What could even or be even worse than a Chinese attack? And that is an attack coming from those two nations, Russia and China, at the same time. A simultaneous Russian assault in Europe on top of a Chinese attack is the worst case scenario. The United States just isn't ready to fight Russia and China in a two-front struggle. Continuing on with the report, if you are regular to my channel, you've heard me talk about the same scenario for a number of years, for at least 10. He says, quote, my real audience that I was trying to reach with that comment there in Warsaw was our European allies, said Hodges. I was trying to tell them, hey, look, we do not have the capacity in the United States to be able to deter Russia. The general was, in short, reminding Europeans that the bulk of American military assets, even in the event of twin crises, is going to be focused in the Pacific. The stark assessment came at the same time that Chinese ruler Xi and the country's defense minister issued their bellicose statements. Now, at the moment in this report, I'm not taking the time to go over the latest trade tensions, but we know that they are there and that they are riding shotgun to this. But at the moment, we're focusing our attention on this. On Thursday, Chinese defense minister at a recent forum in Beijing noted that, quote, China is the only big nation in the world that is not unified. He said the islands in the South China Sea have long been China's territory and warned that we can't afford to lose a single inch of them. And on another sovereignty claim, he said this, if someone tries to separate Taiwan from China, the Chinese armed forces will take action at any price. It was last year that it came out that Taiwan was receiving weapons from the U.S., and this violated a line in the sand with regards to China. So we're seeing a building up and a building up. Now, there are some things that I'm talking to you about here on YouTube today. And there's going to be other things on another day in which I'm going to be going over other information in which I'm showing you the screenshots at present, but we're going to be covering this information another day, including this. Now, I covered this last year, and I saw that this same subject was demonetized several times, even though the subject of China has come up on this channel more than once. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason behind the sensitivity behind this information. Now, as we look over here, we're going to come back to those stories on the other platform. And I encourage you to support what it is that I do in this type of reporting at the link down below. Check out the members area at outsidethebox.vhx.tv. Help me grow that. Please help me grow that over the winter so I can feel free to talk about certain things while speaking more in code here on YouTube and showing you the screenshots. And I think a lot of you are getting the picture right now and why Americans need to be prepared. I also put out a video yesterday going a little deeper into my concerns including human trafficking and some of the specifics. And I think as time goes on, some of these topics are going to be a lot more sensitive. And there are other things that are going on, or that we could face, or that I could face, or that you could face, that's not related to geopolitics, but there's a need for us to be prepared and to have the ability to bug out if need be. And a lot of people are not. So there's emotional survival, there is spiritual survival, there's doing what it takes to stay healthy in the now, in the here and the now. So let's read a little bit from this. Washington's plans to withdraw from a Cold War era agreement with Moscow could have consequences around Asia, potentially escalating rivalry among nuclear armed powers such as China and India. President Donald Trump threatened on October 20th to pull his country from the IRNF or INF treaty with Russia. That's an agreement, goes back to 1987, signed between Gorbachev and Reagan, prohibiting both nations from possessing, producing, or test flying a certain category of cruise missiles. Trump claimed that Russian President Vladimir Putin has been violating the accord, but provided no details. If the treaty is abandoned, Washington and Moscow will be free to develop and deploy more missiles, a risky scenario for the EU, given its geographic proximity to Russia. We will now go back and we will take a look further, but I need to take the time to place, we have a couple of different images here in our slideshow, of the need to let go of the expectation for society to always maintain its sense of normalcy. And there's Superman going through the breakdown as he goes through the breakthrough, as depicted in Superman 3. It's actually a longer video I did breaking it down, but it was using copyrighted content, and I regret not saving that and uploading that to the other forum. So we all have to deal with that shadow self. We can also look at it as our awake self versus our less awake self. And what's probably more important than reading articles is to talk to you about this and this concept. But what does truly being prepared for you actually mean? Does it have to include all of these other people and allies? Or is there something deeper to preparedness that we're not looking at? Why do I look to spiritual texts? And it's not just Gnostic, also Native American, also other spiritual perspectives on the sun. I'm not in a box, but why? Why do we look within? Why do we look for spirit? We're looking for hope in a world that seems hell-bent on all different forms of destruction, including possibly of the kind in War Games, the 1983 movie. Would you like to play a game? Would you like to play a game? Well, this ain't no game. This is for real. But they put things in games to desensitize us. They put things in movies to desensitize us. They create depressions to distract us. As we see here, the character from They Live. You see, and they could cause an event and blame that on a convenient enemy using the Hegelian dialectic. The true powers that be. And we need to access the light within to understand what's taking place. What's taking place in our society. We have to find our own truth. We need to step back from the mass media mind control. We have to be responsible for our own growth at this time. I feel that we're going into some dark ages real quickly. It just happens to be a coincidence that's going in line with the solar minimum, but there can really be a lack of consciousness during periods in which we go through dark ages and there's less light on the world, almost a creeping up of the archonic influence as we ramp up to war. And all this, I believe, is being prepared for the 2020s, specifically on the ramp up to 2025. I hereby signal a danger warning. America is in danger. I'm not necessarily biblical, but there is a 7-year countdown rather from this period now that we're in the year 2018 to the period 2025. What I see online, what I've seen online, what I've experienced at times almost seems to be a never-ending argument amongst people over theories, philosophies that basically goes nowhere. And yet I still feel this society has been gifted with a lot of information and a lot of clues for people to develop their communities, to heed the warning on the West Coast. And there are some people that have chosen to heed the warning. And there are some people that are literally in the pop culture element of conspiracy research that go from video to video to video and political meme to political meme, but nothing's really changed as far as their ability to survive. And in that scene from The Exorcist, where he says to the possessed girl, "From the power of Christ compels you, the power of Christ compels you to get this possessing spirit out of the body of the little girl." And I say to the Chris Greens of the world, I say to the Alex Joneses of the world, I say to the Stefan Molyneux of the world, the power of Christ compels you, in a sense of, demon be gone, wake up, and even take care of your own people as you purport to care about your tribe and the things that are coming at them and the things that will be used against them. For it is I, Alex Ansary, and don't you ever forget the name, that has come to you with a warning. They have used elements and are going to use elements of a right-wing uprising within the post-election period leading into the 2020s to then turn it around and use that on the American people, all the American people, as they build a wall to keep us in. As they build a wall to keep us in. As we face that shadow self within. Have we evolved beyond the ignoramus or the idiocracy? Have we done an inventory? Are you sure? Because I'm not so sure people have evolved beyond the left-right paradigm. I'm not so sure if people understand that off-grid living could become very, very important to people one day. In your preparedness for the future and the things that may come later, it is important that you clean your life up of negative relationships. There's certain advice for men, certain advice for women. Women, get out of the wrong relationships. Men, get out of the wrong relationships. If you're going to be in a relationship, try to be in a better relationship. You don't need extra weight with what's coming. If you're a man and you're responsible for defending a woman, you should, in your mind, have the confidence that most of what you hit with a single punch is going to drop to the ground. This has to be in your consciousness. If you are responsible for protecting anyone or anything, you have to be beyond the man that's sick all day on the couch eating Cheetos, and beyond the person that thinks that he's involved in the hunting, foraging of necessary information by surfing Facebook all day or playing video games. To those men of the world, pull your pants up. And to some of the women out in the world, put your titties back in your shirt. My God. My God. And so people need to get right. They've had their instincts used against them. Their interest in concerns and fears and wars against them with their obsessions on fiction and their obsessions with video games. And you can see now with the data, the increase in solar activity and the increase in world events. The increase in articles showing how vulnerable our system is. So whether it's something geopolitical, as we go back here, or whether it's something solar, people should be prepared emotionally, more so than just having food and water, to deal with the types of things that are coming. And certain things are out of our hands. I have never been a promoter of religion, and I have never been a follower of religion, but the spiritual text and the spiritual journey is something else, and I'm not the first person within your culture and society to suggest such. And so we return to the spiritual question. And who are these people? Do you think that these are normal people that are moving through? Because to me, the real gnosis and the real truth is that in the world of the demiurge, these are servants of the demiurge. These are servants of the death cult. These are the individuals that are carrying through the depopulation agenda. And there is no good guy in the world order system. They are manufacturing a war amongst themselves that they plan to have the people fight amongst themselves. While the negative entities that they serve will literally feed on the pain out of the ashes of the tears, or out of the ashes of the bodies also that are persecuted and that are violently removed off the planet, those now in the Middle East and elsewhere, and those in the future. They have their sacrifices. They have their rituals. But the human population that is currently alive today does not see these particular rituals. things that they do during the solar minimum, operations and psychological operations that they do during the solar maximum, during specific points in the timeline to where they're expecting the civil unrest factor to respond in a certain way based on where we are in the cycle. Based on where we are in the cycle, they manipulate and create events to whip the masses up into a frenzy based on where we are in the cycle, and you're seeing it now. And there's also times in which they don't want people to be protesting certain things. So they will push certain executive orders, and they will make particular declarations, and what energy is built up in the streets, they will create situations to where it's person versus person, or today left versus right, right versus left. While the greater agenda continues, no matter who won the fight in the streets, no matter who won the fight in the streets, those engineering the wars are the only victors. Because when people are fighting in the streets, they're not doing anything to dismantle or shine the light on the military-industrial complex. If the people out there that are saying that the only problem is the Trump support base, then they are showing a blind eye to events like that which is depicted on this picture happening just about every day during the administration of Barack Obama and George W. Bush. It's only gotten worse, but it's not something new. It's something that's been with us. The question is, when is it going to stop? Now, the next question is, why would you think that there isn't a need to be prepared when there is no stop to these never-ending wars? And when we can see a pattern of the Hegelian dialectic. And most people are not ready for the next 911. And the next 911 may come with a twist to it to, in turn, put a certain segment of the population into detention facilities here in the United States. What I see coming is an event in which things like that will be done. And there will even be a quote unquote, I'm speaking from speculation, a Trump was right movement as people march around with signs saying lock them up, like all of them in one particular group. There could be people with certain names rounded up that are caught up in this that are actually totally innocent. Totally innocent. But see, the people now crying foul when it's a Las Vegas situation for good reason, and another situation, like, for example, the packages that were bombed, will that crowd that's questioning that event question what's coming when the other group is blamed? Or will they be marching down the street going, Donald Trump was right? When you study the bots that are out there, they're pointing for this event for 2022. There are literal online disinfo bots messaging 2022 and 2023. What's interesting is that that's 2 years before 2025. And the type of violent uprising that the bots would like to see happen in this nation and concentration camps, that will be used on the world stage as the excuse that the world governments will use to take down the United States and intervene in our affairs. They will say things like, look at what the Americans did. Problem, reaction, solution. There must be some sort of reaction. Something must be done. And if you take the time, we're going to go ahead and do that because we have the internet. If you take the time to listen to just a segment of Leon Legant, I'm going to give you some background as I pull this up. You know, and I was looking late one night in 2007 on the internet, and it was like looking at the codes of the Matrix like Neo, but it wasn't looking at actual computer code. It was looking at patterns. What kind of patterns, you may ask? Patterns involving or surrounding ideas of people having visions of the occupation of the United States. And so different people having prophetic visions and people quoting George Washington and seeing how there was really a similarity in a lot of the things that people were seeing. Okay, we're going to see if we can actually live stream while doing this. And so this interview is at least 11 years old. We'll see if bear with me, we'll see how this plays. And if we're able to bring in audio. But what I'm going to do is drop a link down below, and you can take a look for yourself. Okay, yeah, we're not going to have audio on this. So I'll kind of go over some of the bullet points, but there's been, for example, a lot of concern over the years about implantable microchips. And one of the things that Leon Legant personally saw in his own visions was China itself bringing microchips with, for example, $100,000 being loaded on the microchips. He described other things. He didn't get as deep into human trafficking, but I asked him if that element would be there, and that's something that he saw as well. So, like, various people within our own nation have had reoccurring dreams of things like that particular event. And unfortunately, we live in a world where everything is made into fiction. And maybe you've noticed that some of the things that are actually made into fiction have a certain similarity to things that could actually happen in the real world. Yeah, so you can go ahead and find that video for yourself. And so when people are pretty much fed a certain like projection that everything is a video game and everything is fiction, and that, you know, if something was made into a movie, that it can't possibly be real, that's a pretty good way to describe the current reality that we're sitting in, that we're living in. And it would be like, you know, 10 years ago where people might take certain issues seriously, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. But the greater reality is there's been a massive dumbing down of the general population that can look at things like this, that, you know, China and Singapore have deepened military ties. But when you look beyond the veil of, for example, the Wizard of Oz, you could see that, again, China is involved with our own government in the form of drills to provide earthquake, disaster preparedness support. Also, in another report, we'll go back to this as well. We'll be discussing this on VHX. The Singaporeans have been training in North America in the state of Idaho for a number of years. And what that means is that if there's a link between China and Singapore, there could also be the sharing of information later on that could jeopardize, well, national security for one. The question is, was this always the plan? And this isn't a big rah, rah, rah. Alex Ansary's been talking about this all these years, but I actually have been talking about these things all these years, but I don't talk about it all the time. This is now a time where the things that I've been talking about for a good 10 years are coming up, because this is a chilling reality that we are in now. And with these announcements that are coming out now, and that the way that people are downplaying what's taking place now and acting like it's always been this way, and that all of this is a simulation, all of this is a joke, and the only spiritual thing to do is to put our heads in the sand. And that's the opposite. That is the opposite. That's like saying, I'm going to have a spiritual experience. I'm going to go down to the bar and I'm going to attempt to do everyone inside the bar, regardless of their sex or their appearance. That would, by most people's observations, that would be a crazy thing. Who knows what kind of STDs, somebody might pick up. So when you look at the types of oppression that these masses are heading towards, most of them don't have China and Russia, and what's going to happen after the U.S. goes bankrupt, and how they're going to protect their families, and if they're going to relocate, where they're going to relocate to, where they're going to flee to. My whole life, there's been like a part of my heart bleeding. Funny, they have a joke about bleeding hearts, but a heart that beats for those that are going to be suffering tomorrow. a man that's concerned about what could be happening to women tomorrow. And to like feel this intuitive, they are setting your society up. They are coming. They are coming. They are coming. And see, we have to stop shaming ourselves for being able to see. For being able to see. And now we're getting confirmation. And nothing's guaranteed. So each one of us has to be tapped into reality to where, no, we're not panicking, but we're not so relaxed and arrogant that we think that we're going to be living in the future where we're living now. Again, ladies and gentlemen, men and women, for your own safety and security, get out of bad relationships. And if you're not able to get into better relationships, consider the need to go your own way. I'm not telling you what to do or saying you should do that. I'm saying the people that are in your life should have your back. And if the people that are in your life don't have your back or aren't preparing for some of these things or aren't doing some of the things that they should with their resources, they're making a careless mistake. And so a lot of these things are coming up. And a lot of people are in denial about this. And they're inundated with video games and a virtual reality. And so if, we were to start to really try to measure how far out are we from certain things? Or is this going to be like 10 years ago where it seems like it's on the brink, but it goes on for another 10 years? Haven't you already begun to see the collapse itself of the social dynamics? And haven't we been exposed to how so much of this was planned? And if we know that united we stand, divided we fall, doesn't it seem almost scientific that we were divided early on? And now there's all these resentments and fears. And I can testify that, I used to run around and even promote some of InfoWars content back in the day regarding 911 and the things that he used to say back in the day. And there sure weren't a lot of people, certainly no Proud Boys, certainly no Joey Gibson, that came to join me in Portland, Oregon, where I held my rallies and I held my meetups. It wasn't until it was able to be used as a division, mediums like InfoWars and others, that all of a sudden people start showing up and acting like they care about America. All of a sudden, when it became a sport fight and it's easily one team, two team, at the same time, on the left corner, we have the opposition to racism. Well, let me just end it right there by saying, God help us. If that's the opposition to racism and fascism, if Antifa is the opposition, God Almighty, help us. Help me. Help me, Creator. Creator of even the God of this world, the fallen demiurge. Help me, true Creator, true light force, to do the things that I need to do, because I'm not interested in wasting time. I want to save lives. I want to stop people from offing themselves or provide information that will stop someone from checking out, because life has meaning. Life has purpose. But if you look very carefully at the media messaging, alternative and mainstream, we're being told the opposite, not only about the value of your own lives, but the value of other lives. And it is the ultimate soul entrapment game. And I have pledged my lifetime against the agenda of the demiurge. I want people to see another way out of this prison planet, soul containment center for souls. There is another way out. You need to know that, and you need to know these things are coming, and you're not a victim for being born here on earth. We are all in this together, whether you believe that or not. But these things that I've warned about, this is no longer a video game. These are real discussions about a breakup of the United States 2.0. You could even say they ran a disinfo campaign on us 10 years ago, a cry wolf disinfo campaign on us 10 years ago, and placed certain people in the media to cry wolf early on, economic collapse early on, martial law early on, so when the real threat comes, no one would listen and no one would come. And when they do come, and when they are summoned by those individuals, those deceiving agents of empire that operate within the alternative media, they will send their listeners into danger. You heard it here first from Alex Ansary and only Alex Ansary. Not only are they deceiving for money and creating disinformation. They will knowingly send their listeners into a dangerous scenario, as I predicted Alex Jones would be involved in something in the future, promoting his audience going up against the Chinese, maybe down at the border, maybe on BLM land, maybe over BLM land, and he will know that they are not destined to win that outcome. And one step would lead to another, and another, and another. There was a reason that they bombarded the internet with Hamburger Gate and other things that led to dead ends, because there's a time where trafficking will be the #1 issue. There will be a time where people look back at who warned about the human trafficking epidemic that would come to the United States and the West Coast. And it will only come back to Alex Ansary as far as the people, as far as who spoke against it. And that's not something that's an easy life to live. That's not something that results in someone being invited onto CNN or CBS News, Fox News, InfoWars, The Real News Report, RT. None of those networks, none of those groups, not even AMTV with Chris Green would leave up my interview with him. All of that stuff has been purged. Do you understand? There are people of the Caucasian race at the top level of the media that are not sounding a similar alarm to Alex Ansary that there is a type of hunting or white slavery that seems to be prepared for America's future after they get elements of our society to do the unthinkable. And what we've seen is a continuation of that. I believe we will wake up one day to 24/7 coverage, making the American citizen the enemy of the world. And the American people won't understand it. Despite all of that type of psychology being done to others, they won't understand what's being done. But by that point in time, there will be no time for people to say, Alex Ansary, I'm sorry, I treated you like trash when you were trying to warn us. There will be no possibility for communication at that point. We will be on our own. And at that point, and you know I'm reaching a conclusion here to this day's podcast, it's going to come down to whether the actual deeds in some cases or not. There could be other factors that dictate whether we live or die. But what you do here on this planet has power, and it matters. How you project yourself, how you treat others. And a lot of people have drifted away from the golden rule. And they've drifted away from looking at the sun from something other than that which brings us light, or something that may take away the grid, or something that may give us pretty lights called the aurora borealis. Most people in 2018 don't want to look at the basic fundamentals of life. They rather say those basic fundamentals of life don't even exist, and neither do I, or neither do you, and neither does spirit. But just because there are people that are coming out of the woodwork to say that certain things don't exist and nothing is reality doesn't mean that they're right. If there's a coordinated bot campaign, then people should wake up and quickly see if there is an attempt to take us away from the truth. If there's an event like 9/11 and it whips us up into a violent frenzy, people should be able to look at that and go, this has never served mankind. This has never even served the white people. All this has done is just be a drain of resources, and overall is part of a plot that others will use to take down the U.S. from within. I'm telling you, the masterminds of that plot aren't Muslims. I don't even think they're humans. They have created the false conspiracy and the false enemies of the day, I am telling you, Alex Ansary, to bring apart a very dark world where there's the karmic return. And the karmic return is complicated to explain, and there's a lot of people that like to try to find ways to evolve beyond or get away from karma, and people like to write long articles saying it doesn't exist, that what we put out doesn't come back. And yet they are so horribly wrong. They can try to run from their lessons in this classroom where all of life is a test, and they can even be angry with that awareness. You know, but it doesn't change the ultimate reality that life is a test. Life is a test. So in a future video, I'm going to wrap things up. Please become a member to support my work at OutsideTheBox.vhx.tv for the uncensored coverage that I will continue here and there, but I'll also keep it real here. But certain breaking news and certain items of that nature will need to be reported in the real sense of what's really going on over there, because YouTube has changed. You can also support by going to Patreon. We had our first new Patreon supporter in months. My overall goal, I'm reaching it by a third. I would love to see that change. There's also links down below. PayPal, Western Union is accepted. Any way you care to help, I'm looking for volunteers to help me with specific things. We're not talking about socializing, but if there are people in the state of Colorado, or if there are people out there that develop websites and social media networks, I still think that there should be a backbone response, a social media response that's not controlled by the tech companies to help people get prepared for the things that are to come tomorrow. But we are not now in a day and age where a lot of people want to do those things and respond to the call for help. It's actually bottomed out in the trajectory of the statistics of the all pastimes, looking for engagement to, it's like we're on our way out. There is no YouTube solution to something like this. They're phasing out our voices, and they probably have their targets lined up. Everything's in God's hands now. Everything is in God's hands. What happens, what doesn't happen, that's up to the creator of all that is. What if we're here to learn a certain something that we haven't learned yet? What if we have learned things up to a certain lesson? Then maybe we will have the hand of protection. But the construct collective hand of protection over the United States, I do not feel that it is there. It is on its way out. The doors have been opened, the invisible doors. They have been, yes, people are angry, but they're angry at the wrong people. They're looking at the wrong invasion, and they did that on purpose. They did that on purpose. They created hysteria and the false immigrant invasion to make way and cover for the real invasion that would come later. And most people are not ready for this. They are not ready for this. Instead, there will be an uprising between now and the 2020s where you will see more people call for an element or a segment of the U.S. population to be placed into internment facilities. Later, once those facilities are up and running, but maybe they won't even need to get to that point, that and other things that are yet to happen that involve U.S. foreign policy and strikes on foreign targets will be used as the propaganda that will turn the world against every American citizen. And yet Americans will wonder in horror why these things are happening to them and why their women are being taken and sold and end up in places where they don't know where they are. They will not yet, even in the darkest of days, be able to connect their apathy with regards to what their society did to the Middle East. In no way is it right for future Americans to be punished because of what the government has done. And I'm here to tell you that I have met people of your tribe, of your society, that have actually said over the years, America deserves it. There are people that are amongst your kind that say all the time, America deserves to fall, go Russia. And they don't even think, take, or plan, or future trip as to what happens when America falls. Well, America's daughters aren't going to be treated like princesses when America falls. And so here we have all of these people that are all up in arms about all these other groups, but they're not discussing the elephant in the room, the human trafficking element, as I elaborated on VHX for members only. The greater reality is I risk my physical life sharing these perspectives with you. And I don't live a life where there's yet been like a positive return or true, holistic return of energy at this time, and the future could change. Instead, there's been punishment. And this content has always lived in the arena of the far fringe, in the minds of the people on the left and the right. Always. Always. If you're coming from the left, you think I'm a right-wing lunatic. If you voted for Trump, you think all this liberal content, even though you cannot show me a single CNN show or show of that nature that gets into this type of analysis of what they're doing to your society. And I talk about how CNN actually uses racism and other networks to actually marginalize the white American for future events. Show me one show on the networks that gets into that. You can't. Show me one other person in the alternative media like a peer like me who gets into similar content and or discusses the solar flares. You can't. What you will is you will remember the name Alex Ansary. Even if you laughed at me today, even if you listened to all of my programs for years and you never thought I was worth contributing to, where you liked the content, then you hated the content one day and you went back and forth like it was ping pong ball, you will remember these videos that you thought were on the fringe. And in the end, the only way that I think that you can prepare for what's coming is to try to help the people at risk. That's it. You can also repent in other ways for the people that you've demonized as ISIS without any evidence. And I see very little evidence of anyone doing that. So I don't really see any hope for the future of this nation. The only hope that you or I or any of us can have or our souls lies with the Creator. And whether, you're actually living in a world that you're trying to help move forward, or whether or not you're part of the beast system that is devouring life and demonizing life, one bomb at a time. There isn't much of a gray area. There's plenty of people out there that are full on, in reality, on the side of the bombs dropping, even if they act like they're independent and woke, through their hatred of others and their inability to see how a lot of people have been set up, how there's lots of manufactured events, not just when it's their group that's blamed. I mean, you want to see idiocracy, you want to see a fallen state, material state, where some of the most corrupted souls end up, we're on that planet.